Hi, this is John Rosenhead, a Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post, the Parsha of Naso, is titled A Matter of Life and Death. In this week's Parsha, we read about the Nazir, and a Nazir is someone that decides to take upon himself certain obligations, or we could say certain restrictions. And this is split up into three different categories, three different areas of limitations. One is that they limit the pleasures that they can get from the life. That means that they're not able to drink wine. Another area is external pleasure or external beauty, that they're not able to shave, have a haircut. And the third category is that they're not allowed to come into contact with a dead body. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz explains, and this is based on the Mefarshim and the Rambam, and that the process of becoming a Nazir and the decision to become a Nazir can be viewed as a person trying to elevate the holiness, trying to increase the amount of kedusha that they experience in their life. And this is taken through their oath of becoming a Nazir. And what's interesting, as Rav Chaim Shmulevitz points out, is that number one and number two, which is not drinking wine and not having a haircut, seems to make sense. It's certain pleasures and enjoyment in life that a person limits themselves for this time as a Nazir, which can create a heightened level of focus and therefore have a knock-on effect of increasing the person's experience of Kedusha. But the third aspect of not coming into contact with a dead body, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz seems a little bit puzzled about this, because on face value he says that death and coming in contact with death and mourning and bereavement is actually something that has you could say an uplifting or an elevating effect. That's not to say that it's something which is positive, and certainly it's not something which a person wants. But as Rav Chaim Shmulevitz explains, based on the pasuk in Koheles, that it's better, in the sense the pasuk says that it's better to visit a house of mourning rather than to go to a party or to some festivity. It seems to be that on face value, at the root of death, and being in contact with a dead body, that it's something which is elevating, as the Mefarshim explained, based on the pasuk in Koheles, that this is an experience which holds at the same time this balance, or the issue of a matter of life and death. That death has an impact that crosses this spectrum of life and death. That a person, through this experience, whether it's close family, friends, or even anybody that comes into contact with this experience of death, who goes to a house of mourning, irrespective of their level of connection with the person with the deceased, it has an impact. The Mefarshim explains that it is an uplifting. It opens a person's mind and a person's heart. That coming into contact with death, coming into contact with this concept of bereavement, is something that gives the person an insight into the fragility of life. It opens the person's awareness of what their dreams and aspirations are in life, and actually creates a greater focus of how they can try to implement this, and how they can actually try to create a life which is focused, more meaningful. And this is addressed in the literature into death and bereavement, which looks at the understanding from the close experience of family members, how it can have this effect on people trying to find some way of creating a new norm, trying to integrate the grief into their life, to create a way to continue. And this often involves maintaining a connection with the deceased, maintaining a connection which can be some sort of a physical, objective connection, whether it's with the kever, the place where the person is buried, whether it's something more abstract, maintaining a connection with the aspirations and dreams of the deceased, and trying to maintain that and actually continue the path of the person that passed away, that it takes on a new meaning in the life of the family that are left behind. And the process of bereavement, as the literature addresses, is that it's an ongoing experience. It's an ongoing experience of maintaining a connection, but then continuing at the same time. And in a way, it's something which, as we said, can affect every single person. That the experience of death and bereavement is something that can't necessarily be mapped onto a chronological sense of time of before and after. It's something that each person experiences their own subjective way. Each person tries to find a way of dealing with this confusion and trying to understand where they are and how to place themselves, and to try and find a balance of this spectrum of life and death. that although life can seem so broken and life can be so meaningless when they lose this loved one, actually what comes out is a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose and direction that is elevating. And as we said, obviously it's not a positive experience. It's not something which a person wishes or wants to experience. But the reality is, which is what the Pasuk in Koheles is saying, it's better in a sense that it is more uplifting and it is more elevating and it creates a greater focus if someone was to go and experience this profound and difficult experience of loss and bereavement, rather than going to a more positive or happy experience of a simcha, of a festivity or some celebration. This, if we're looking at what is elevating, if we're looking at the idea of a nazir who wants to create greater kedusha, perhaps being in contact with death and bereavement is something that can create an elevating experience. So Chaim Shalom has to explain, trying to understand why a person who is a nazir still cannot come into contact with a dead body, but at its root is what we can see from a psychological perspective is that coming into contact with, experiencing this death and mourning and bereavement, which is something which unfortunately we have all on a personal and public communal level experienced as an ongoing experience since October the 7th. If we take the message from this week's Parsha and we take the wording of the Pasuk in Koheles, I think we can understand what is this profound message, and we can understand how we are living through this experience, both difficult and tragic, but also uplifting at the same time. And hopefully we will be able to celebrate in the coming months. We do want to celebrate, we want to get to this time, but if we are living through this difficulty at this moment, if we have to go through this process of loss and bereavement, to take it on and to internalize the meaning and message of this experience. Have a great Shabbos and keep well.